Hi, everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a LatinX writers podcast. I'm your host, Ruben Mendive. And today we have a brand new guest here brought to you via virtual communication. And I'm so excited to have them on. I always like to have my guests introduce themselves. So your name and how you identify for the people at home.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Dominic. I'm a gay New Yorican writer, actor, educator whose spirit was lucky enough to be born in the Bronx, New York.
And you led me to my follow-up question. So where are you from? So when people ask you where are you from, what's the short version? What's the long version?
So I'm born and raised, in case you didn't know, I'm the first answer, from the Bronx, Castle Hill section of the Bronx specifically. A lot of people know that because of the icon and queen, J-Lo. But it's actually a section that gave birth to a lot of us. J-Lo, Kerry Washington, Stephen Canals, we all came from like the same community. In fact, we all went to the same Boys and Girls Club at different points of our lives. But so the BX, no matter what happens, like I can go to LA or whatever place to work, the Bronx always calls.
And so, I've never been to the Bronx. So how would you describe it while you were growing up and even now? Like, what's the flavor?
Child, there's so much. I mean, the Bronx is everything. Our flavor is everything. But I will say this, growing up, when I grew up, late 80s, early 90s, it was rough, especially like Castle Hill. Castle Hill then compared to Castle Hill now is completely different. It was working class, but more so like, working poor. Yeah, like it was one of those things where it was really hard growing up. I'm not gonna lie. I was lucky enough to have a place, the Kips Bay Boys and Girls Club, which essentially was my second home, maybe more so than my actual home because I spent so much time there. And that's actually where, I discovered, performing and the arts. And I was really, really lucky to have that because it took me away from just the craziness of my environment. I mean, we're talking like, the height of the AIDS and crack epidemics. And yeah, but that being said, the Bronx is changing. Although I feel like, to a certain extent, sometimes it still has that stigma to certain people who don't know any better. And that being said, as rough as it was, I had an amazing childhood. Like it was one of those things where it's just like, I didn't know any better. It was my childhood. Like that's how it was. It's just looking back on it, was like, oh, seeing some of the stuff I saw as a kid, like that's trauma. And that's maybe why, 40-year-old me has this, kind of issue with this or whatever. But there was a lot of community. It's something that I always hold dear to my heart. I love my borough. I love my city. I think maybe now, specifically in the section of the Bronx I'm in now, Mott Haven is a little, it's like, people like saying, oh, like it's like the new Williamsburg, whatever. The Bronx is always going to be better. There's better restaurants, maybe. There's more murals now, if anything. It's still real. But the Bronx is definitely changing. I don't know if it's for better or for worse. It depends how you want to define it.
Yeah. And so like, what's your parents, grandparents' story? Like who are they? Where do they come from? What's their story?
Yeah, I have a very complicated family. My parents came over here from Puerto Rico relatively early. I want to say my mom was like 5 or 6, and my dad was maybe a little older. My mom followed her mom here, who came to set themselves up. My mom never knew her father. There still is, a lot of mystery around that, and because of that, we don't necessarily have a big family. My grandmother was one of 4 sisters. They were all stunning, like these stunning, like gorgeous. Like my grandmother, God bless her, she was beautiful. But there were some issues there. In terms of how she parented my mother. She was absent a lot. Which my mother and her brother had to basically take care of themselves. And her brother, who was a little older, was a surrogate parent, I guess. But then he bounced to the military. So it was just a lot of, stuff. And then with my dad's family, my dad had like a little more structure, I guess. His father, was a teacher in PR and they came. But my father didn't really like his family. Like we didn't grow up with this connection to the island or to family. Like it was kind of like us, and like I have some cousins who are like close, but it was more about like the people who became family as opposed to like this is blood. Yeah, it's just family is complicated. But I love my family dearly.
And so, like, how would you describe your household growing up?
It was okay. I mean, again, so I'm one of four siblings. My There was a little break. And my parents were together over 50 years, but there was a not a break in the marriage per se. But my father cheated on my mother, and it was something that my mother never really got over. So there is a 10-year age difference between my older sister and me because they were like figuring it out. Ultimately, they decided to stay together. Damn, this person. We go in there. But I always say this: my parents were doing their best given the experiences that they had with their parents, and I love them, and they had sacrificed so much for us, especially for me and my siblings. But you know, education was very important, and at the time when I was in school, like I did public school first to fifth grade, and then in the sixth grade when you go to junior high school, whatever, shit started getting real rough. And we couldn't necessarily afford Catholic school, but we went to Catholic school. Like they made that thing, whether it was, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, like that was a thing for them. They wanted us to have that discipline, that structure that wasn't really happening, at least, for a lot of, my peers that, I grew up with. Yeah, like I always, Stephen Canals and we've become like close, but he went to high school across the street from the building that I grew up in. And he always shout out to Stevenson High School, but that shit was rough. That shit was rough. And I always say, no matter how many Emmy nominations, whatever, the thing that impresses me most about him is he graduated from Stevenson High School, like for real, in the '90s. What gangster as hell. But that being said, there was so much love there, and even in my parents' dysfunctional relationship, they stood together because they loved each other. Love takes different forms sometimes. But my father, who passed away in 2013, this was one of his last words to me. He said, I'm sorry I didn't love you in the way that you needed. I loved you in the best way that I could. And to me, I always try to operate under the assumption that everybody is doing their best. Like we're just always we're complicated people. So yeah. Does that answer the question, Shay? I don't know. I'll be veering off topic. Sometimes you got to rein my ass in.
No, it does. And I'm curious about people during their high school years. So like 14 to 18, who were you? Who were you pretending to be? How do you think other people saw you at this time?
It depends on the year of like high school. I went through this kind of transitions. I think, I started high school in like the early 90s. And it was a Catholic high school. So being out, especially in freshman, sophomore, even junior year, was not a thing. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have it was not an option for me. But that being said, I was kind of quiet. I hung out with all the pretty girls. All the straight guys hated me because they were like, "Who's this dude? Why is he around all like the hot girls or whatever?" But I didn't want to be seen. You know what I'm saying? I kind of had this thing where I had like certain friends who were upperclassmen that I was cool with, but in terms of my grade level, I was just kind of like the quiet dude who hung out with like cute girls. But eventually, I want to say in sophomore year, because I didn't do it in freshman year, I joined the school play, and it was one of those things where it was just like I had spent so much of my time trying not to be seen, and then I'm in the play, and like I shined. You know what I'm saying? So it brought all this attention to me, whether it be from students or teachers, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, the actor kid, and it was that. And then it was like, oh well, how do I embrace this? I liked being anonymous. I wasn't a good student, but then like the play and the art shone this light on me, so I had to embrace that. And then eventually I embraced that. And then I think by senior year I had found my clique, my community. I wasn't out. I wasn't out at the time, but I had a little boyfriend. I had Leo DL boyfriend in school. Yeah, and stuff would happen sometimes in rehearsal. On those Sunday rehearsals in Catholic school. And then I think that made me a lot cooler. I think Dominic now would tell Dominic then just to be more gentle with himself, that things are going to get better. I was just dealing with a lot, like, figuring out who I was in this crazy ass strict environment, which did not match my home, which didn't match, like the boys and girls. Like, it was always trying to fit in these spaces where I didn't feel comfortable at the time.
Yeah. And so what'd you do after high school? Did you have a plan? Things go according to plan?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird. So I will tell you this. In fourth grade, my mom got me this little like autograph book where like you got to plan like oh, you're high school, whatever. And I remember saying the high school that in fourth grade, saying the high school that I wanted to go was either Fordham Prep High School or Cardinal Spelman High School. And then my colleges was either NYU or Fordham, something like that. I went to Spelman High School, and then by the grace of God, I can say NYU. I mean, I had a fierce audition, but my grades, I don't know how the fuck I got in, but I did. And I went to NYU for acting. And I got in. There's a program, the Higher Education Opportunity Program, which is for economically and something disadvantaged youth, for the help, give you a lot of fucking loans and scholarships, and help you pay for it. But NYU was an experience unto itself. Like, even though born and raised in New York, I still felt very much like an outsider. Like, I was the only one. I was taking that 6 train to the village every day. I was, the only Latino in my acting studio. Everyone else came from somewhere else. I was still the other, and I didn't have the tools really to process that. Plus, I was poor, so it was just like, and I didn't know what wealth was. Like, I had no, like, even though my high school was a little more, diverse, which means, yeah, we had like some Italian kids, but they were working class and working poor. So like everybody kind of came from like struggle or working class. Like, I didn't know what it was to like, oh, my family has a jet. My family has, I don't like, wait, what? Like, and then as an actor, to be in an acting program, after not having like, yeah, I went to the Boys and Girls Club, but it wasn't like formal, strict, this what acting is. It was like I felt like they tried to strip me of everything that made me beautiful and who I was, and that eventually got me employed as an actor. So yeah, it was like how I planned, but it was nothing like how I planned.
And so what'd you do after NYU? Like, how do you feel like it like set you up, or you set yourself up for the next thing?
I came out of NYU and I was a serious actor and I was going to do serious things and whatever the fuck, because that's what they put in your head. And I was so unhappy. I was doing a project like Henry V in like the Lower East Side in like a fucking closet practically. And it was the worst professional experience of my life. I couldn't connect with anybody. I was the only Latino. However, rewind, prior to that, like everybody, everybody forms a theater company coming out of school. Like, this is the thing. And I had formed a theater company with some of my college friends. And one of the plays we were going to produce Jose Rivera's Marisol. We didn't have a Latina at the time to play Marisol. So I saw a production of this play called Banji by A.B. Lupo. And there was this actor, Marilyn Torres, and she was beautiful. She shined, and I just remember being like, "Wow, I wanna work with her." And at that time, there wasn't like Instagram. There wasn't like nobody was accessible. But I remember when we decided to do Marisol, I was like, "Wow, she would be great." And I happened to talk to a friend of mine who had gone to NYU a couple years before me. He was a little more kind of like in the acting scene. I had just come out of school. And I had mentioned Marilyn, and he knew her. And I was like, "Can you put me in contact with her?" She came, auditioned, she got the part. We became really close. She's still one of my closest friends. But I remember at the time expressing to her my unhappiness. And she's like, "You got to work with your people. You have to work with your people." And at that time, there was this company called Intar. It's an off-Broadway company called Intar. They would have open auditions twice a year for LatinX talent. And it was cold. It was like February. It was freezing. I had it at the time, New York, it was like a 2-fare zone. So it's like you had to pay twice or like walk. And I remember walking, I didn't have any money. But I made myself go to this audition, even though I wasn't feeling it. I was in the middle of that production at Henry V. I was so unhappy. But I kept on hearing voice, "You got to work with your people. You got to work with your people." I auditioned, and Michael John Garces, I think he runs a theater company in LA now, but I auditioned for him, and he recommended me to Candido Tirado, who is a playwright and a writer. And I ended up getting cast in a show that he wrote, and that literally changed my career because people started to see me, and I got to work with family and community, and so much work came from that. And like I remember, I got my first agent soon after that and started, working in TV. Like I booked the SVU, this is kind of like full circle because this is totally, I don't know if you know this or not. This is basically the LatinX writers version of SVU. You are not a Latinx writer until you do like Lista. So yeah, that changed it. That changed it. That was the beginning of the acting journey.
Because you're coming up, you're hustling. Like, when did you feel like, oh, like when you thought in your head or told people like, this is my big break, like this is the thing that's gonna send me to the next level?
So that I did this movie called On the Outs, which is still one of my favorite, just the work that I've done. It was this indie with Judy Meyer. It was about 3 girls who meet in a juvenile detention center and follows their lives on the outside of juvie and on the inside. And it was just one of those things where it was just like, oh shit, like to see myself and to see a performance of mine that I just completely transformed. That was like, oh, okay. But then like, the reality of the industry hits you and you realize that, oh, this is a special piece of work. But at the time, we didn't have the content that exists now. We had Law and Orders, we had Oz, we had, Third Watch. And it was something that the quality of the work that I was getting wasn't fulfilling to me. And I had to do something to change that. Luckily enough, prior to that, I had developed skills as an educator. So at NYU, one of the blessings that I got was I discovered that I love to teach. And I started working with the Boys Club of New York, and I started mentoring. And, I took a lot of my elective courses in education and how to use my skills as an actor in education. So by that point, and this is how I discovered, well, one, how I learned to write and how I discovered that I was a writer. I would get asked or paid to perform scenes written by young people that would, playwrights would teach playwriting in schools, and they would bring me along as an actor. And because I was a good actor, I would get asked to do this a lot, and I would work with a bunch of different playwrights. And so I would sit in the back of the classroom and watch them teach playwriting, and that's how I learned how to write. And then eventually I became so good at it that I got asked to teach playwriting. And then I ran a theater company that did HIV prevention through theater for young people. So that became my saving grace. I did that, and that provided the balance to all the bullshit of the industry of like playing the drug dealer and like doing all that stuff. This is where like I found out how art can change people, and I discovered that, and that has remained the constant in my writing, and it's the why to what I do.
And so like in those early days, you're learning about writing, you're creating your own stuff. So like what was coming out?
Well, so we were contracted to specifically deal with HIV prevention, but that was something that has always been at the core of my being. Like, I write a lot about that time because it was something that we still haven't seen a lot of. I want to say I lost everybody before I lost the age of 12 or 13 was because of HIV. And at that time, we're talking early 2000s, there was no PrEP. It was that it was this, and this is how you get the word out. This is how you change behavior. And I saw how art can change behavior. And that was really, really exciting. So we did work around that. We did work around domestic violence and homophobia. And I noticed that the plays that I would write for the company would really, really hit in a different way. And that became my motivation because I realized that you can entertain, you can educate, and you can inspire, and it doesn't have to be exclusive. I think so much of, even now, the industry thinks you have to be one or the other. And I think now we're starting to find like the richness of it all and like the power when this medium is used for good, what it can really do. And once I caught a hold of that, even in the schools, I was like, oh shit, I do this well. This is what I'm excited about. This is what I'm passionate about. This is for us. Like, that's really what inspired me.
I am curious about like because you mentioned it, like SVU, like I'm curious about the like New York actors, like sort of hustle and sort of like circuit, and because you've been in a couple of stuff. So I'm just wondering, like, for someone who's like maybe in that space or trying to get into it, like, what was that experience like?
I mean, it's a great community. Like the actors are fine, amazing, beautiful people. I would say the hustle's always hard. I just think at that time, the quality of the stuff just wasn't what it is today. There's so much more content. There's so much more diversity, within the writing. There's so much depth now. We didn't have the depth. You know what I'm saying? Back then, it was drug dealers, hookers. Like maybe one got to break through and play a detective if you're lucky, but it wasn't like that. And that for me, that's not who I was. So I didn't enjoy it. That's not saying that, I just, for me, it's like the humanity is what I tapped into. And I think, so many of us, are just so, the work that was existed wasn't worthy of our talent. And I think more than that, like there was a frustration, and in that frustration bonded us. But I think that's why you see so many people thriving now. But like you see the Elizabeth Rodriguez's, you see the Liza Colón, you see the David Zayas, everybody doing their thing. OGs who've been around. You know what I'm saying? Like we've all like, there's so like paid our dues, you know what I'm saying? But you hearing about people now, 30 years into the game, 25 years into the game. And that's just, one, because, the hard work that you put in, but also just like the work allows us to shine more.
Yeah. And, I was lucky enough to catch a viewing of two of your short films. So I'm just curious of like how you got there, like what was the motivation behind those films, and like what you were able to build from it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So, so Crush was my first short film. And Crush started out as a play that I wrote for the company. It was a short play. It was about a kid who comes out to his crush at prom. And it was a piece that whenever we performed it, people would love it. They would eat it up. And everybody was like, yo, you got to turn it into a movie. You got to turn it into a movie. You got to turn it into a movie. And I heard about this competition that HBO was doing. I decided to adapt it into a short screenplay, and I won, and HBO gave me the money. And we had 19 days to produce it, to shoot it, to get everything done before it made its premiere at the Latino Film Festival. And we did it. HBO had the option to pick it up. They did. And it became, and within 2 months after that, we were airing on HBO. So it was such a whirlwind experience that all of a sudden, again, like I had eyes on me, but I didn't have like the next question everybody asked, what do you got next? And I didn't have anything because this was literally the first thing I did. But I was also at a point in my life where I felt like I needed to do work around myself. Like I think that was like one of the hardest, darkest periods of my life. I think that was when all that toxicity, frustration, all the shit that you grow up with and you don't address, that was when it really started to hit me. And I realized that at that point, I had to work on myself, which is when I really started going to therapy. And the therapy led to kind of me developing a spiritual practice that ended up, for those of you who don't know, I was a working actor for a long time, but I was larger. I lost 200 pounds in 2014. So at this time during Crush, I was still heavier, 200 pounds heavier. And all of that work around my healing, I like to say, manifested the weight loss. And then I went from constantly working to completely looking like a different person and having to introduce myself to an industry that had an idea of who I was because I worked for so long, but then really didn't know me. I was going to a point of like just kind of having an actory whining moment where it was like, nobody's gonna hire me and I'm gonna be broke and poor, and my manager at the time, she was like, Dominic, she's like, I don't feel sorry for you. She's like, you are an incredible writer. Create something for yourself. Tell the story you want to tell. And I was like, all right, fine. And yes, I went and I wrote the first draft of the film in a couple of hours. I pulled the crew together. I raised the money. And that film in particular, whereas Crush gave me the realization of, wow, okay, this is what it could look like. Skin gave me the motivation to say, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what the next phase of my life is going to be. Because I remember being on set, seeing everybody there, everyone got paid. And I was like, wow, people are here because I had the courage to tell this story, to create this world, to hire these people. This is what I want. This is what the next part of the journey is going to look like. And then I really started committing to writing. And then I'm here.
Skin is such a powerful film, because the best work is the stuff that it's like that you're sort of holding in and you're like, I'm never going to talk about this. Like, this is going to be my secret. And then you, through the art, you release it, and then you find out so many other people also have the same thing. So like,
Yeah.
what was that journey for you, like emotionally?
I always say this. Well, first of all, holding back is not something I'm good at. Like, I just am one of those people. But I mean, this was literally balls to the wall. Like, I mean, I did a love scene after losing 200 pounds, and we are all up in the nooks and crannies. There is not one speck of Dominic that is not seen. So it's like all up in there. But that's what the story needed. You couldn't tell the story that I wanted to tell and hold back. So that honesty is what I want in everything that I do. Is what I push myself to do. So it's scary when you have a whole crew of people watching your crotch behind the monitor. It's scary, but you do it because of the work. You know what I'm saying? Because you're gonna have somebody who's gonna be touched, and that's the thing. Is like you never know who you're reaching. You never know who you're touching. Like I do a lot. At one point, I would host or do talkbacks of plays or whatever, and I was hosting a talkback of Choir Boy, and I was with Terrell Alvin McRaney, and so we wrapped up, and oftentimes you do a Q&A or whatever, and people want to come talk to celebrities or whatever, and like there was this one dude who was kind of like hanging around, obsessed. So I was like, oh, he wants to talk to Terrell, and we ended up splitting, and then he came to me and he was like, oh my God, did you do this short film that was on here? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh my God, you don't understand. He's like, I saw that and I sobbed, and I went through that experience from a partner. And I'm like, the last thing I would have thought is that this guy would be in a hotel room watching my short film, just like, because sort of like you forget that it's out there, like, and it was out there, and not only is it out there, it's touching people, and it's just like that's the power of the work. Like I still get emails about Crush, and this is 10 years later. Yeah, and like with Skin, you got to work a little harder to find, but it's out there. Like, yeah, and it's beautiful, and that's why I do it.
When did you feel like you were sort of just like the point in your like life and career where you were like, I'm going to focus more on the writing. I'm known more for being an actor, but like now I'm sort of putting my writer foot forward.
I mean, I think it definitely happened after Skin. I think now it's like people are like I've been identifying more as a writer first. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that is really what I'm passionate about. And what's crazy about that is, I mean, I've been doing it for myself, but I was having a conversation with a mentee of mine, and we hadn't connected in a while, and I was telling him just about all the stuff I'm doing right now. He's like, wow. He's like, you're a writer. And I'm like, oh shit. And I was like, yeah. Because like this is the first time in my life where, at least from now until March, I'm not teaching at all. I'm not auditioning. I'm not, like, everything is just like just writing and focusing on the next couple things that I have, because I have to, but it's like, wow, okay, so this happened in the middle of a pandemic. And it's just like, okay, it's super exciting, and like this is what I want, and like I show up for it, but everything, like, up until, like, everything that I've experienced in my life has led me to here, and it's just like, I'm 45 years old, like, what I'm saying, this shit didn't happen overnight, but it happens in the way that it needed to happen.
And so, how you got on my radar was through the LatinX TV list with the Blacklist and Hulu, and a bunch of other Latinx organizations, because you were named as like one of the, I don't know, are we calling them winners? But you sort of got like a little script deal with Hulu. So what was that whole experience like?
Oh my God, it literally changed my life, like, hands down. So like I've been in the game for a while, in addition to acting, all that stuff, after winning Crush, I worked for the Latino Film Festival, and I programmed for the New York Latino Film Festival. And I've just, like, that was a passion of mine, like, kind of connecting and creating while still working on my own thing. And I think, like, everything you do, like watching shorts, reading, going to plays, like, that all makes you a better writer. So I think while a lot of the work that I was doing wasn't visible, I was working my ass off, because I realized when I had the experience with Crush, I didn't have nothing at the time of Crush, when Crush popped. So I was like, that's not going to happen again. The next time I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna run with it. So after Skin, I began working on a bunch of projects. I created a short form series about a closeted bisexual barber from the Bronx who, on the day of his 21st birthday, gets custody of his 6-year-old daughter, which is my show Papi. But I originally conceived it as a short form series. And I got into a program with Nalip, where I got to go to LA and to pitch it. And when I pitched it to the executives, everybody was like, yo, like, why are you doing this as a short form? Like, yo, get it together, write the real story because you're going to make money. So I came back to, and that was the year Vida premiered. And I remember coming home and watching Vida, and I was like, this is it. It's a half hour, it's dramedy, this, and I began to work on it. Inevitably, try to put it out there. I didn't have an agent at the time. I would meet with people through various connections, whatever, and like white people, and they would be like, you have an amazing voice. You're so this, you're so talented, your dialogue, your structure, you're this, but I don't know how to sell it. And I got on the LatinX list, and there's no coincidence that, the fact that, Latinx people created this opportunity, created this list, that when I was named as one of the finalists, things started to happen. Like that light was shown on me, and I had the arsenal to back it up. So that's how, stuff has changed. I got the manager, I got the agent, I got a blind from Hulu. Papi got a deal at 20th. We're taking that out now. I got it. Like I've been working. Yeah. Nonstop. I just got staffed. I start on Monday on a new show for Netflix, and not playing.
No, and I think it's a great credit to all those programs and opportunities we create for each other that, I mean, it doesn't take that much. You just need like big, well-known names and organizations sort of putting a spotlight on people, and like the talent's already there. It's just like, like you said, people are working, people are hustling.
Yeah, people are hustling, and the support, and it feels good because, one of the things, like, prior to the Latinx list, like, I was always showing love. You know what I'm saying? That was one of the reasons why I programmed, because it was an opportunity to shine light on talent, on Latinx talent. I firmly believe the energy you give out is the energy, you receive. And I must have did something right because the universe has had my back, because the people that, I viewed as, and still view as, heroes were now like, people who looked out for me. Like I didn't know Steven, prior to the Latinx. I remember seeing him before Pose at an Alip conference, and this is right of the news as Pose was happening, hearing him speak, and be like, we're gonna know each other, we're gonna work together one day. And he was the first person to call me, to reach out, to be like, yo, if you need anything, I got you. He's like, because people are gonna be coming at you. If you need to know who is who and who is what and what, and it was that type of support, just to know, because like, when that happened, I did get the phone calls, and so wanted me, and this person, and it was a lot, especially when you're not used to having that. So yeah, just always so many, to have that love and to have that support makes entering, the industry in this new way so much easier, knowing that I can be like, yo, this is what I need. Like, what do I do, in this experience? And yeah, that's invaluable. And like and we have the power to do that all the time. Like, you are doing that. So thank you. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're like, that's how we collectively move ahead and change shit and make it better for the next generation.
Yeah. And I did want to talk about, some of your work with like the New York Latino Film Festival. You're like their like resident host and like face. So I'm just curious of that relationship.
You want to know something that kind of came? So like, I started out for one as a, with Crush as a winner. And then eventually just like, I enjoyed programming, and I felt like I learned a lot, and I did that. The host thing, let me tell you, that came out the blue. So it was quarantine, everybody was jumping on Instagram Live. And Calixto Chinchilla, the founder of the New York Latino Film Festival, had on Lisa Vidal, because Baker and the Beauty had just dropped, like right at the beginning of quarantine. And they had done this live. And Victor Versouk is a dear friend of mine. I love Victor. At one point, we lived together. And, Victor has his ways about certain things. And I was like, yo, Calixto wants you to do a live with him. Would you do it? He's like, nah, I ain't gonna do no live with him. He's like, I'll do it with you. I'll do it with you. And I was like, and then I asked Calixto was like, yeah, do it. And like, we did it, and like people liked it, and it became a thing. And then like the people from Baker and the Beauty were like, "Yo, you want to do Carlos? You want to do?" And then all of a sudden, I was like, "All right, well then that's everybody's home." Like, like so it became a thing, and it's just like it was one of those skills that I just enjoy, talking to people. You know what I'm saying? I'm not much of a like people think sometimes that I'm an extrovert or whatever, and I'm so not. But like one on one, like that's what I thrive for, And then I guess that popped. So yeah, but I've done less of that just because like I'm busy, you know what I'm saying? But I love it, and I love the festival, and like I've gotten to know because of the festival so much of like Latinx talent that I wouldn't have been able to connect with otherwise. Like my talent crush, Eddie Mujica, like we programmed two of his films the same year because I saw it and I was like, oh my God, I love this guy. He's so funny. He's so diverse. Fran Cabaret shout out to Fran. Like his first, short films, like he put in the festival circuit, we gave him his premiere, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like that's community that was able to kind of like, bridge the New York and LA because we would do that. That to me is just so much fun, and like it's again, it's what we do. It's like the bringing together community, but also just being able to elevate and provide spaces for each other is just really, really beautiful and invaluable. And it's one of the things that brings me the most joy.
And so I'm curious about this new room that you're in. Is it a Zoom room? Is it in person? How's that working?
We start on Monday. I'm super excited. It is a virtual room. I'm sure at some point, they've let us know at some point it's gonna go be in person. But for now, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hang out in the Bronx and like, do that. I don't really, I'm such a New Yorker. I don't really drive. I have a license, but I don't drive. So I'm gonna milk this as much as possible until I have to go to LA and and that. But I'm super excited. It is. I was very specific in terms of the show that I wanted to staff on because I have so much in development. I knew that it obviously we all need to work, but I wanted to make sure that it was, if I was going to staff on a show, was something that I was excited about, that I feel like my voice would be not only appreciated but needed in the room. And I found this show, or this show found me, right? Really. And I'm so excited. It's called Pink Marine. It's very gives you Orange is the New Black. It is about a gay kid who in 1990 joins the Marines via the buddy system with his best friend in Don't Ask, Don't Tell at the time. So it's about him coming of age in the military and that whole experience. But it's really, really, really funny. Has so much heart, so much depth. And I am just so excited not just to tell, the story of Cam, the hero of the show, but all of the hero. Because as so many of our people are in the military and everybody has a story, and shining light on those stories is one of those things that I'm most passionate about. So hype.
And I also want to know about this, like the development of it all. You're on the blacklist. This spotlight is on you. Everyone's coming at you. So like, what has that experience been like to be like developing projects and like working with different studios?
So like with Papi, it's been great because Papi, the script was what ended up on the list, but then kind of really getting specific as to what the whole series is going to look like. And because these people want everything, they want to know exactly what it is. So really like getting super specific with the journey of the show is something that I really excited me, and I spent a lot of time doing with my executive producer. So yeah, so we're ready to kind of take that out now. So that has been beautiful. Like, cause again, like a lot of the times, like when I was creating, not like a lot, for a significant amount of time, I was just creating by myself. So now being able to, work with an EP, work with a studio, work with a network. So with The Blind, it's been a whole process because, at first it started out, just developing with Hulu, because Hulu was like, give us The Blind, but then they were like, all right, well, let's match you with a producer. So then I'm working on my Hulu Blind with Anthony Hemingway Productions. Shout out to everyone there. They're amazing. And they're under 20th. So I get notes from 20th. So it's just like, getting the notes from the production company, the studio, and the network. It takes time. but it's super exciting. So hopefully, I haven't written the pilot per se because I've written 80,000 outlines.
Yeah.
But knock on wood, we're at a point right now where we're getting notes on what we all think will be the final version of the outline. So I'll be able to go to pages on that soon. But again, it's such an invaluable experience. I've learned so much about this show that I created that a year ago. It wasn't even an idea, it just kind of came. But, you come into being, you're supposed to pitch a couple of ideas, do that. They decide which one they want, and you start figuring shit out. And then, and then the road. But each process has been its own unique experience. And my job in it is to enjoy each part of the journey and just take it in and learn, because I think eventually what it's done is it's just made me better. You know what I'm saying? And I'm taking those experiences now and I'm going to bring that into the room, and even though it's my first time staff writing, I show up as my full self, and I think that I think finally, after however many years, I've been able to realize that's your job, to show up as your full self.
So the New York, sort of writer scene, film scene, TV scene, it's still very much a mystery to me. I think I'm slowly chipping away, trying to get an inroad into that whole community. But how would you describe it, for us LA folks?
I think I feel like I mix a lot, you know what I'm saying? I think it's the same thing, just different codes. A lot of us bleed. I mean, you're doing a great job at melting it. You had Dominic on, and she is an alumni of the New York Latino Forum. Shout out to Dominic, is just blowing up with the Read LatinX writers list and all of that. We're a community, and I think what is beautiful because of podcasts like yourself, and because of the internet and Twitter and all of that, we're able to create this community virtually or whatever, through these experiences. And what I find is that people are just coming together. I don't really see a separation, especially because, at least we screen so much stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I've been able to physically meet these people like Eddie or whatever. We've shared space in New York and LA. So there's this I don't know. Should we have a East Coast, West Coast beef? I'll be Biggie, you can be Tupac.
No, I'm just trying to learn more about, I feel like I know the LA folks more than I do the New York folks. So I'm trying to learn more about them.
I'll give you a bunch of names and you can have them on. I will say this, I think a lot of the now we're at a point where I think New York people are, because of Zoom and stuff, are starting to transition a little more into TV. But New York is theater. So a lot of the heavy hitters, are the Latinx playwrights who are doing their thing, Well, depending on when this comes out, so I have a short play that I was commissioned for that's going to be virtual that everybody can check out October 22nd. I think it'll live online. I was part of the NHMC showcase this last round, which came out after forever. But we were able to, they were shoot that during COVID and make that happen. You can check that out on the NHMC showcase, and hopefully a lot more soon. Very soon, yeah.
Yeah, and I saw your film for the showcase, and it's so good.
Oh, thank you. Let me so that is the first scene, or an early scene in a feature that I wrote that I to make. I can't wait, and it will be made. It's a super fun shit. You wouldn't know it, but that film's about strippers. It's basically Magic Mike meets the Wizard of Oz. Okay. So yeah, no, I love that, and they did a great job. They did a great job. Shout out to the NHMC.
Sometimes as writers, we put a lot of ourselves, the things we're struggling with, into our writing. So I'm curious of the themes in your writing. What do you see always popping up for you?
Yeah, it's all about stepping into the best version of yourself. It's about healing. I think we all are special. We all have, I believe, we all have a reason why we are here, why we are connecting with each other. I don't take that for granted. I think one of the things that has come from me working with young people is that I've been able to see mirrors of myself. And I think one of the reasons why I decided to really pursue being a writer and have that be at the core was because, I always found myself teaching about the importance of telling your story, about liberating yourself and stepping into your personal power, that I realized that I had to do that myself. And I could facilitate that experience for others but I also owed it to myself to give that to myself as well. So I think once I made the decision to do that, everything opened up. So that's at the core, like, stepping into your magic, is the number one recurring theme throughout everything, even in my gay stripper movie.
I always like to know who my guests are a fan of. So these could be friends, peers, people you creep on social media who don't know who you are, but who are some of the writers you're loving right now?
Oh my God, you're gonna have to get ready because oh my God, I'm a fan of so many people. I have to, shout out, well, one of my OG playwrights. We have to shine a light on the playwrights: Candido Fidalgo, Carmen Rivera, Migdalia Cruz. They're like old school New Yorican playwrights who, like, when I was in school, there was one book of New Yorican playwrights, and it was like plays from the New Yorican, and like I remember taking it out in college because we had nothing else, and finding this book and be like, okay, I'm gonna do a scene from this. Hey, white girl, you're gonna do a scene from this play, because I'm always having to do plays from white. And later on, I met Candido, and he essentially the person to start my career. So shout out to them. I will always be a fan of that whole crew. Shout out to Steven, Claudia Calderon, Kelly, Danya, because they're really like kicking down doors, and making it so much easier for the rest of us. My talent crush, Eddie, my Zora friend, Esteban, Dominic Nieves, Kay Peña, Michael Diaz, aka Wambago. He's everything. He's hilarious. He's doing a bunch of stuff. Armando Riesco, he has a film on HBO Max, Seneca. Jessica Marie Garcia from On My Block. Y'all don't know, but she be writing down. Y'all better get ready for her. Paola Lázaro too. She's a playwright, but she's also on Walking Dead. David Tripler. The LatinX Playwright Circle: Kristen Cato, Guadalista Carmen, Patty Dukes, Nelson Diaz Macano. I wrote this part down because I was like, if I don't forget, this just don't come from me. Frankie Gonzalez, the NHMC, LatinX Dream Showcase, Abigail, Miss Angelina, Christopher Ureña, Erica Lindo, Rachel Sass-Muniz, my Sundance sister, Henry Alexander Kelly. And that's the list that I got. If I forgot, I'm sorry, don't hate me. But those are the people I fuck with a lot.
Big fan of a lot of those people.
Yeah, you have a lot of them on the show. And the other ones who you haven't, we'll work on.
So where can people follow you on social media?
I'm so easy breezy at Dominic Olong. It's just my name. I had to get rid of Sexy Latin Papi 6969. It just wasn't working professionally. So yeah.
That name's reserved for other things on the internet.
Yeah, totally. So, but yeah, at Dominic Olong.
I also like to ask my guests to help me title the episode. So the prompt is a blank Latinx writer. You can put as many words as you want, mix all around. Just whatever feels true to you, this conversation you're writing. I also like to use it as a community building tool so that when someone sees the title, they can be like, oh, that's like me. I should follow this person. I should listen to this conversation.
I feel like I had a couple. I think the one that I'm being most drawn to now is a badass New Yorican writer who is about it. And that's it. Yeah. Because I feel like the New Yorican badass part that's very so important to me. I think being about it is the most, because I feel like it's real easy to talk about stuff and to get on stage and give a speech, but if your track record and your work doesn't follow that, it means nothing. So one of my mantras is be the person you say you are, so go out there, do the work, and make that change, because we all need each other. So yeah.
Love it. And, with that, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was such a treat. This was such a long time coming.
Oh, yeah. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I feel like, I made my La Lista SBU debut. It's real. I'm a writer now. And I'm so appreciative. The work that you are doing is so important and it's so special. And we need you. You are a champion of so many. And I admire that. I respect that so much. So thank you for not only sitting down with me, but for everyone you sit down with. That is really, really beautiful and so